Yo, what's up? Welcome to Chestnut Checkers podcast. It's your host, half of the team. It's your host M Reed signing in on behalf of Trey Butts for the Chestnut Checkers podcast. Tonight we're gonna do something a little different. We're gonna find explore a new lane with me doing one on my own, an interview by myself with one of my former students and baseball player Maxwell Martin, who just got off the Joe Biden campaign trail. So I'm really proud of Max. He's a good ball player, and even better guy. We stayed in touch over the years. I actually recruited Max um, when he was in eighth grade. He came on an official visit to McKinley High for a football game, and I was like his escort or whatever. He knew some of the kids already. He fit right in. He ended up not even playing football, but I ended up coaching him in baseball. So we just developed a relationship through that connection, and I'm happy to have him on to share his experience with our audience with Chestnut Checkers. So I'm about to hit the invite on this Zoom, and whenever he chime in, we gonna just start chopping it up. But I wanted to go ahead and introduce myself and kick the show off, and yeah, you know, I might kick a freestyle over one of these instrumentals for y'all one day. I got it in me. I got it in me. I'm a hip hop head. Know that. We definitely got to do more with the hip hop content on our page and just in our shows. But that's one of the main connections that me and Trey have is through the music. So we gonna always keep that going. Make sure everything good. All right. I'm about to hit send for my boy Max. Get him in here. We're just gonna keep the conversation going there. I'm sure today is January 7th, it's 8:37 p.m. I got my kids all ready to go to bed. Had dinner, had their bath, daddy duty, daddy time, father son time. We got that in. So that's always a blessing for me to be able to spend time with them. To Maxwell. We do not own the rights to this music. Okay. Email situation didn't work out, but we got the Zoom ID coming through. All right. Max should be joining us shortly, and until that point, I'm gonna just keep talking. We got the Zoom going. We going on YouTube. We got to really do a better job of getting some followers up on our YouTube, and our Instagram and our other social media sources. So we hit the ground running. We had a nice buzz behind us, man. We didn't know what we was doing, and we still figuring it out. But we did get a lot of good feedback, and I appreciate everybody every time anybody listen to anything, like anything on our page, comment, share it, or just interact with Chestnut Checkers or myself or Trey on behalf of Chestnut Checkers in any way. And any feedback is welcome. If it's things that we got lacking, and you can help us out with a few encouraging words and constructive criticism, please let us know. Because I always keep the door open, because that's how you grow. You can't grow without nobody being honest with you. You know what I'm saying? You got to be honest with yourself, and you got to be honest with others. So, I know this ain't perfect. If it was, we'll probably be the number one podcast in the world right now. But we not. So we got people who better than us. Anyway, but we coming, and we not giving up. We not stepping back. All right. So Maxwell here. Let's welcome Maxwell Martin to the Zoom call, ladies and gentlemen. Maxwell.
Hey, can you hear me?
Yep, there you go. Haha. What's happening, man?
What's up? I'm good. I'm good.
I'm loving the
I
red
haven't.
beard.
I was just about to say I see some gray in your beard. I haven't seen it in a long time.
It's a lot
2020
more
aged
gray. It's a lot more gray than the year you graduated for sure. That's what them kids do.
2020 2020 did it to us all, coach.
2020 put it on me, bro. Like it started early for me. Like anything else was like second to Kobe passing. For me, that was like if I could trade anything for 2020, it would be Kobe coming back. No doubt about it, man. It would be hands down. And I'm sorry that
that was the same year.
yeah,
That's crazy.
right. I mean, a month after the Kobe after he passed, they had the memorial. I went to see 311 at the Fillmore in New Orleans because that was Mardi Gras weekend starting off. And the next 2 weeks, 2 weeks later, we was out of school and baseball was over and everything was shut down from March.
No, that's crazy. It just seems like that was like 3 years ago.
Seriously.
I was actually out knocking on doors, and I knocked on this guy's door, and he opened the door crying, and you could hear his wife crying in the other room, and I was like, oh, I'm so sorry, I can come back another time, and he was like, no, it's okay, and he was just like, did you hear what happened? And I said no, and then he told me, and I guess they were big Laker fans and Kobe fans, but
yeah. Where were you at the time?
I was in Las Vegas because
You was in Vegas.
Yeah, I was in Las Vegas, and then the day of the memorial was the day after. The day of the memorial was the day after the Las Vegas or the Nevada caucuses, because then we got sent to Alabama. I remember that because I was watching the memorial in the hotel room before we got on the plane. Damn.
Bruh. Yeah. It always go back to code with me. And so I got on my Indians jersey tonight, bro, because it's got Lindor on the back.
I was gonna say the end of an era.
So I had and also the name change. Like this jersey is like is it. This is the last Indians jersey because it's gonna be a whole different team. So I gotta make sure I hold on to this one. Because
so what are they doing this year? Are they gonna have like a Washington football team thing? Are they gonna be like Cleveland baseball?
They haven't decided yet. Gotcha. They still waiting on that, but that's a possibility, obviously. But I think they've been planning this for a while now. They phased out the Chief
Wahoo. Yeah.
They took that out a couple years back. So we knew this day was coming.
Yeah, and I gotta be honest with you. At first I thought the Washington football team was funny, but I think it's kind of cool. Like not having a logo at all. I think it's kind of like a clean
right.
The just like property of like Washington football team is just like a very clean cut.
Yep.
So there might be something to it. But I think it was the Cleveland Spiders in like the 1910s before they became the Indians. Is that right? Would they go back to that?
I don't even know that. I got to do my homework about my own team. Baseball goes so far back that it's hard to keep up with all those stats. I ain't even gonna lie.
Right. Well, and the teams moved around so much, you could have like 10 different teams in Cleveland. I think that's right though.
You fact checking the Spiders?
I'm fact checking. I want to fact check myself. I think it was the Cleveland Spiders. I think that's right.
Yeah, I've told this story before on the show, but the reason why I became a Cleveland Indians fan, I probably told you before, but my uncle passed away and he was a huge Indians fan, and they made it to the World Series the next year. So I
was that the Indians Mariners World Series?
It was the Indians Braves.
Braves, okay.
Yeah, the Mariners won that one. By that time, I was like, no, that was the Marlins. I mean, by that time, I was like all in Cleveland Indians fan, and bro, I've had my heart broken.
Yeah,
bro.
And then
2016, bro, we up 3-1.
It's just tough because right now the way the money is in baseball, it's like you got like 6 or 7 teams that will spend, and then the rest you get your farm system, and then you get lucky while you have them under that first contract. But like traded away Bauer, traded away Kluber, traded away Lindor. It's just they're just not going to spend. That
Clevenger,
ownership group is just not going to spend. Clevenger,
Sabathia.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, the list goes on, bro. It's a long list of guys who
But it's not just them.
left
It's like
us and went and won. Even like Jim Tomey. I had I was very fortunate, man. I got to meet Jim Tomey at the World Series in Pigeon Forge with my traction team. And I was in the he had a little Q&A moment, and I was asking him. He was like, "Man, I loved your questions." He saw I had the jersey. He signed like 3 of my baseballs.
Wow.
So, but he ended up winning the World Series.
Isn't he like huge?
He's about an inch taller than me, but he is like thick, like his neck.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like all his chest is like this big. You know what I'm saying? Like you could tell his forearms is like Popeye. You know what I'm saying? Like all of
Which World Series did he win? Did he win in 06 with the White Sox?
Yes.
Okay.
White Sox.
That's right.
Yep. The division rival.
That's right. That's right. Well, it just sucks with all these owners now. It's just like they're pinching every penny, and it's much more fun when like everybody's competing. But now it's the NBA too. Like if you're not at the top, you want to tank.
Right.
And there's not like that middle class of teams. That's the great part about football is you can turn it around so fast that there's less of an incentive to tank.
Right. Yep.
People thought Miami was tanking last year. Now they're 10-6 and they have 20 draft picks.
They did not tank really. They started playing really well at the end of the year, just like the Jets did this year. You know what I'm saying? The Jets end up winning their last 2 and competing in for the majority of the game in their last game. So, and they had the Raiders beat. I'm good on talking about the Raiders right now, bro. I'm good on that. We ain't even got.
I know your Twitter got quieter and quieter as the season went on.
No, but I use my so I have a alternate Twitter that's called the Red Stick Raider, where I just talk. That's where I go to. I have to switch over because I don't want to just get it like I can just do Raiders content. I went live a couple times in the last couple weeks. Go follow the page.
I know. I was gonna say I need to know where I need to go trash talk you.
Yeah. Oh, I'm a little bit less professional. You know what I'm saying? Because nobody really follow me on there, like people who I work with and stuff like that.
Well, but that's the good news though, right? Is you're a year away. Yep. You get the right quarterback and you get enough people on defense, and any team's a year away. Is Carr? Wait, where is Carr? Like, is he staying or what's the deal?
Yeah, he is in this will be year 4 of his 5-year contract for $125
The fans aren't done with that?
The
fans aren't done with that experiment?
No, I think that a lot of fans want to get rid of Carr. I think if we can get Watson for him, you got to make that move.
Oh, yeah.
You got to make that move. But we got to get our defense right. And, I mean, Josh Jacobs got in a wreck and got a DUI and bust his head the other day. Like, they arguing with the fans trolling them. Like, Raider Twitter is a very toxic place. So that's why I had to create a different one, because I don't want to mix the toxicity onto my regular timeline when people just think I'm nuts.
You just box that out.
Yeah. Separate. People, Raider Twitter is ridiculous, bro. It really is.
I tell you what, though, Henry Ruggs is scary. Very good.
We Gruden ain't using him right, and that's a whole nother conversation. Gruden.
Well, you gotta be able to throw the deep ball though. I guess Carr can throw it. I guess they need to run it. Yeah.
Yeah. And we got a good line. We got a good running back. We got a great tight end, arguably the best in the league. He's
so freaking good.
Yeah. So we don't have any excuses on offense. Nelson Aguilar even played really well for us. We just defense injured and weak and not good, especially in the secondary, and no pass rush either. So you can't have that.
And you beat the Saints and the Chiefs this year. It was a weird season. A lot of big ups and big downs.
Yep. But anyway, man, let's get into it, man. I gave you a brief introduction before I brought you on air, and I kind of talked you up a little bit about our relationship as a player coach, and how we stayed connected throughout the years. Obviously you graduated from McKinley in 2015, but I'm gonna tell my favorite Max Martin story when you made all district after playing only 4 games, but hit like 6 doubles and legged out 3 triples some kind of way. We used to call him Hot Wheels as he ran around the bases with reckless abandon for getting out, but somehow always landed on base. It was really funny to watch, but it was some great baseball you played in that short stretch that got you to be a first team all district player on a team that struggled to win games in district. I don't think we won any. So just talk to us. I want to ask you first to kind of, you know, give yourself a little background from high school and going to McKinley, and also you know, where you are now, what you got going on through college.
Yeah, well, I think I was going to get 6 hits that season no matter what, and luckily I only played the five or six games instead of the 30. But yeah, I think McKinley High was where I was always going to go. It's an incredible place. Anybody in Baton Rouge knows McKinley High, or everybody in Baton Rouge either graduated from McKinley High or knows somebody who graduated from McKinley High.
100%.
And I was always interested in politics, and I think McKinley is such an inherently political place. Yes. A lot of schools you go to, there's not that history, there's not that tradition, and then you go to McKinley, and people are talking about the principal, who's going to be the principal, like it's the governor, the mayor, or the head football coach at LSU. Every position there has that gravitas,
right?
And it has that history. Obviously, being a white kid, not living in Old South Baton Rouge is different for me. It's an experience where, obviously I'm an alumni and I have a lot of pride for the school, but I also recognize the privilege in being able to step away from that, and it's something that I feel like a duty to protect, but also I realize there are parts of it that I can't quite partake in. But I think it's the jewel of the city, and obviously you look from mayors and city council people and Congress people and head football coaches and the leaders of the city. It all runs through McKinley, and so it's a special place. And I think being around that political environment kind of fixated me and focused me on that being what I wanted to do. And when I got to LSU, it was no different. I was in the student senate. That's where I met my now fiance. But and then as soon as I got out of school, thank you. And then as soon as I got out of school, I jumped right on the 2020 election, which is one of the craziest in American history.
Definitely. And man, it's definitely the craziest one of my lifetime. The 2001 was a big deal for me because I was a junior at McKinley that year when the Bush and Gore situation went down. And then I was in U.S. history and taking Miss Bentley Smith as a teacher. I think you took Miss Bentley Smith too.
Yeah.
U.S. history. So we share that, and she allowed us to pretty much hash it out as students and discuss and it was so crazy that it was such a Democrat versus Republican debate in that class, and none of us were even old enough to vote. You know what I'm saying? But it was a big deal, and bragging rights was on the line, like we was pulling for our favorite football teams. And when Gore, I went to sleep the night of the election, and Gore was in the lead. And I woke up the next morning and and Bush had taken the lead. And I was just like, what? No, they cheated. You know what I'm saying? Kind of feeling like the Tuck rule. That's what it felt like, the same thing. So, yeah. But 2020 definitely probably takes the cake after what happened on yesterday.
Well, certainly the 2000 election was crazier in all the fundamentals of it, right? For one, it was closer. And then you have the dynamic of one of the candidates' brothers being the governor of the state it comes down to.
Right.
You have hanging chads, all these, cinematic movie-like details. And then the Trump factor kind of, waves all over that. Because as close as that race was, Gore conceded it 20 days later, right. Whereas President Trump lost 5 states by hundreds of thousands of votes and still has yet to acknowledge that there's going to be a new president in 13 days. So I agree that, 2000, I wouldn't have thought it could be beaten until, Donald Trump came on the stage.
Yeah. So, I mean, and in between these, what's the word I'm looking for? volatile elections that we've had in 2000 and 2020, we had a 2-term black president that was inaugurated without incident, which I also thought I would never see. You know what I'm saying?
When you say without incident, what do you mean?
Like without the other candidates conceded victory, like immediately, and he pretty much won handily, like by a landslide. So it was just like we looked at the numbers, and Obama was winning pretty much from the beginning to the end of both elections. It was never like, oh my God, he might lose. Like, nah, we got this the whole time. And with both Trump and Biden and Gore and Bush, it was such a back and forth close race that you kind of felt like that the Republican candidate was going to end up winning. And uh, Gore came in late, and we thought he had it, but he didn't. And then we thought Trump had it at the beginning, but these votes came in. I mean, the vote even wasn't even declared until days later anyway, which I had also never seen. So it's a very interesting time, man. And the fact that you actually got to work so closely with the campaign uh gives you a very, very unique experience, and something that a historical experience with a lot of significance. So I definitely am thankful that I have the connection that I have with you, and that you were willing and able to come on this show and discuss it with us. So if you can kind of just start off from the beginning of how it worked out, I might jump in and ask a few questions here and there, but I just want to kind of like just lay it online and summarize how it all went down for you, how you got in it, and you know what
Yeah,
it
of course.
take for you to do.
Yeah, of course. Well, it started out. I graduated college, and I knew I wanted to be a part of it.
Mm-hmm.
And I reached out a bunch of different places, sending my resume out a bunch of different places. But as we started off the podcast, I ended up sending it to Representative Ted James, McKinley alumni. It always comes through, and he was the co-chair for the Kamala Harris campaign in Louisiana. And so I was able to join that campaign in Nevada. I was in rural southern Nevada. So basically, if you cut the state in half, everything below the half point, but not Las Vegas.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the desert. It really is the desert. On one of my first day there, I was driving down an abandoned, to me abandoned, there's no other cars on the road, highway.
Yeah.
I saw horses running across the desert, and I didn't even realize there were still wild horses in the United States.
Wow.
But there are, and they're in the desert in southern Nevada. And yeah, one of my main cities was Pahrump, which is about an hour outside of Las Vegas, and it's known for Sherry's Ranch, which is the biggest brothel in the United States.
Okay, then.
And I went to another one of my areas was where Area 51 is in Nevada, and I drove around to folks' RVs and houses that were living outside there. So it really is, and it's the driest place in the country. I mean, it's really so different from where I grew up, and
right.
It was an incredible experience. And you're going out to this rural desert, conservative part of the country to advocate for why this Black woman should be the first woman and Black woman of the history of the United States.
Yeah.
And it was an interesting experience, but I think all of us do this thing where we say, okay, well, the Black people are Democrats and they live in the city, and white people that are richer are Republicans because they want to pay lower taxes and they live here, right? We kind of compartmentalize people and put them where we know they fit.
Right.
And the fact is, some of the most liberal people I've met are these people living out in the desert surrounded by gun-toting Republicans. And, it's easy to place people in boxes, but it opens up your eyes to the fact that, people live everywhere.
Right.
And there are Black rural Democrats, and there are Black urban Republicans, and there are gay Republicans, and there are, rich white Democrats, and there are folks who aren't either party. And, there are certainly trends, but, going to a different part of the country, meeting new people, kind of, opened my eyes. And it was a really incredible experience to kind of be out on my own and to explore that part of the country.
You opening my eyes right now, because I mean, you know these things, and you know that people are all different, and you really can't lump them all in together. But if you never really interact with people who have all these different backgrounds and different experiences and different perspectives and different political affiliations, and all the gumbo that a person can be, if you don't really get to see a bunch of that, you kind of just, you do lump people in, and you say that, oh, that's all white people are this way, all black people are that way, all Republicans are this way, all Democrats are that way. And I was actually talking to my students about that, and I had to tell them, because they kept on saying, like, this is my African American studies class, and I ain't trying to put all the business out that we going on with my kids, but I had to like correct them on, like, well, white people always doing it. And I'm like, well, time out, y'all. Y'all don't know any other white people other than the ones that go to St. Mall and be around here. Y'all just, and the ones you see on TV that you think you know, but you really don't. So stop lumping all the people together. Stop trying to, judge a person before you meet them, and try your best to just be open about who they are, not what color they are and what comes with a color, or what's supposed to come with the color, with the stereotypes. But I just wanted to jump in on that, because what you were saying was so profound, and it connects to what we try to do with Chestnut Checkers between me and Trey, who he's actually coaching soccer tonight. I said that also off air, but I never got a chance to tell you that he wasn't gonna be. We kind of just jumped in, but he got a couple soccer games, so I just was like, me and you got it. But
yeah, of course.
Right. So okay, so you in South Nevada, you find out that everything is not what you might have thought it would be, and you your eyes are getting open. You on your own for the first time, really getting to experience all this. So what happened next from after that?
Well, and I have to correct you and say it's Nevada. And the only reason I do that is because the first time you say Nevada while you're there, you'll get yelled out of the room, which happened to me on a few occasions.
Nevada.
But yeah, Nevada. They don't take kindly to people mispronouncing it. But
Thank you.
So yeah,
I'm going to Vegas for to go sit in the black hole, so I needed to know that.
That's right. Nevada, Vegas, Nevada. So after the December 1st, and we got a text at 6 a.m. And it was like we're having an all-staff call that day. And what I kind of learned about these all-staff national calls is if you're getting on them, either something really good or really bad is happening. Mm-hmm. Because when you pull all the resources and time and get everybody in one place, it's not going to be somewhere in the middle. And that was when Kamala told us she was dropping out. And it's an interesting experience. It's almost like a breakup, because, you picked up your whole life, you moved out there. My, at the time, girlfriend had moved out there and found work. And there aren't weekends in this job. We worked during that time period. We had one off day every 2 weeks, and you're working 70 hours a week, driving 10 hours a week. And it's special because you want to do it. And I would have, obviously I would do it all again. It was the best experience of my life. And then you realize it's over, and you look around and you kind of have to pick up. And we were really, upset and disappointed. But the most incredible thing is, Kamala Harris, conceivably her entire life, or at least for a large period of her life, wanted to do this, wanted to run for president. And now in front of the entire world is the first one to drop out. And the day after she dropped out, she flew to every single state where she had campaign offices, met with staff, volunteers, and, shook our hand and thanked us for our work personally. And when I tell you, she didn't stop for 15 or 20 minutes. I think she got there at 5 and left at 9 and talked to every single person who wanted to come see her. And really spoke to her character. Yeah.
That's dope.
And
I respect that.
Yeah, I did too, because I might have been at home curled up in the dark watching ESPN, but she made the way out there, and that kind of gave me the jolt of like, okay, if she's not done, I'm not done. Uh-huh. So then I hopped on with Biden, and that's when that picked up. I switched campaigns.
Nice. So how were you able to contact Biden's staff and able to get connected with that one?
Well, yeah, I think at the time, So it was right coming into January, and so the primary was starting to heat up. More money was coming in, and their staff was growing out a little bit.
Mhm.
And so I think once you drop out, everybody else is already signed. So then you become one of a few free agents who's still interested. And then there was a position open that they were growing, and I reached out to some folks I know in the campaign, and tried to get on. The interesting thing is each campaign sort of has their own identity, and this might intuitively make sense, but Bernie supporters are different from Kamala supporters, are different from Warren supporters, and all their teams are different. And so I was a bit nervous about what that change would be like, but I went over, and that was right at the point when the campaign was when the races were starting, and I joined. And then right when I joined, we finished 4th in Iowa and 5th in New Hampshire, and every single newspaper wrote that Joe Biden was dead and he should drop out. And so that was my welcome to the campaign.
Yeah, that's funny. Because how you describing, Kamala's team versus Biden's team versus Bernie's team, and I was a Bernie guy, especially in 2016. Like, I was big for Bernie, but I was disappointed in myself because I wanted to vote in the primary in Louisiana for Bernie, but so I went to vote, but since I wasn't a Democrat, I couldn't do it because I'm registered none. I don't have a party. So I was like, dang, I'm messing. If I'd have known that, I would have went ahead and did it. But I just keep hearing all these people, all these angry Republicans saying the Dems, it's the Democrats, it's the liberals, always blaming everybody, the liberals and Democrats for everything. Like, who are liberals and Democrats? What does that mean? What does that say about a person to say that they are a Democrat? Are you like it's like they aren't people anymore. It's only the party that they associate with, the person with. They don't see the humanity in any of the people who they oppose or who they disagree with. They only see them as Democrats and their political party affiliation. And I think that they over-identify with their own political affiliation as well. And I think that's why you get that extreme behavior that some of these Republicans are doing right now. It's really embarrassing.
Well, right. And I think I forget who the speaker was, but he said, an atheist has never been convinced to fly a plane into a building or to set a woman on a cross on fire. Mm-hmm. And you have to have this higher belief to do crazy things. And so these people who stormed the Capitol yesterday and broke windows and slammed stuff on the ground, these aren't your next door Republican who believe in lower taxes, and states' rights. This is a cult of personality at this point. Yes. Because you don't storm a building and break windows and all that because of some sort of obscure political ideology. I mean, it is a cult of personality. But I will say, I'm one. I think there's a few different ways to look at it. I'm one to think that politics is kind of downstream from culture, and as you look at the way internet has changed our lives, the way our social communities have changed, it's so much more easy to become radicalized and to radicalize yourself. And certainly that has benefits. There's benefits to having more voices. You doing this podcast is something. You having this voice, people listening to you. It's inconceivable 20 years ago, but at the same time, there's the alt-right conservative version of you who's telling people to storm the Capitol and kill Nancy Pelosi. So
that's not even funny, really. I'm probably laughing too hard.
No, well, it's not funny, but it's happening, and it sounds silly, but it's serious. I mean,
right.
And it's not just podcasts. There's people who watch Sean Hannity, Tucker Carlson every single night, and you say Democrats. Well, look at what they're watching.
Right. Candace
Owens.
Look
at me, right, exactly. If you look at me and you say you're overweight, the first question is going to be, well, what are you eating? Mm-hmm. And so if you look at somebody who's crazy politically, the first question is, well, what are you watching? What are you listening to? And so I think it's true, but I also think it's sort of predictable given how our media environment has changed, why people are so rabid.
That really does explain a lot of it. And I definitely agree and see it the same way, because I was talking to people all the time about how I watched a lot of Fox News when I was in college because I wanted to balance out myself from all of the MSNBC I was watching as well. You know what I'm saying? I wanted to like listen to what the other side had to say. And whenever I'm doing research, I would always, you know, I want to Google, if I Google something, I want to Google it and put debunked beside it. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Just to see, just to make a comparison, to see what other people who view it from another point of view think about it and what they saying about it. That alt-right Malcolm Reed, what is he writing and what is he saying and what is he like, doing as far as political activity or anything that else he got going on in his life. Because if I can see that, then when it comes towards me, I can be prepared how to deal with it accordingly. And
That's true.
I feel like the only way to deal with these Republicans is to stay as far away from them as possible. Those crazy ones that that's storming the Capitol and doing all that. But other Republicans, who just want the lower taxes and things like that, I want to have conversations with them so we could kind of get on the same page and figure out how we can make the politics work for both of us. And that's what America is supposed to be about, in my opinion.
And that's one of the things that's changed, though, Coach Reed, is because when you were in college, there wasn't these alt-right YouTube pages. You could turn on the TV, you could watch MSNBC, you could watch Fox, and you're kind of, between these two walls where you're kind of figuring things out. But now, and idealistically, it's a good idea. You want to balance yourself out. You want to hear everything. And I think a lot of people say that. They're free speech advocates talking about this. The reason you don't want to censor everybody is because you want them to be able to sample everything. And I agree with that. I don't think censorship helps. But I will say the media environment now is not a kid watching 3 different channels on TV. You go on YouTube and you get suggested this alt-right video. Right. And you watch that one, and without pressing anything, another one loops, and another one loops, and another one loops. And you go on Reddit and you go to R the Donald, and you're seeing these conspiracy theories, and you're never given that other side because the media environment is so large, right? So curated that it's not meant to be healthy. It's meant to be, it's a business. It's meant to keep you watching. And so I think I just worry whenever we have a conversation about like how to balance people out, I worry that it's just not really a realistic picture about what people are seeing. Right. Your Twitter feed is filled with people who agree with you. Mine's filled with people who agree with me. And the alt-right Coach Reed, to keep using this avatar, is filled with people who think like him. And I also don't want to make, equivalences between Coach Reed and the alt-right Coach Reed, because one of them is someone who should be allowed to say what he wants, but we shouldn't take it seriously as the alternative.
It's for sure. And you make a lot of good points, and that is the main difference of where I was when I was in my early 20s, and those are very formative years for a young man. To what's available to a young man in his early 20s now, completely different. And that goes for black, white, Republican, Democrat, whatever. Like, it's so many different things that you could get into, and they just and the media is just overly saturated with it. And once they find out that you like something, they just gonna blast it everywhere. You know what I'm saying? Your Instagram feed gonna have it, your Twitter feed gonna have it, your Facebook, whatever you sign in on, all of these ads are gonna be catered to your algorithms that go throughout your whole phone. So like, I be looking for all the some of the alt-right websites, and I be like, Republican this, Republican that. It's hard for me to even find some of it because my stuff all is stuff that goes against them that starts popping up on Google.
There was this girl earlier this summer, and she went on one of these viral videos where she says the N-word and she gets expelled. It's one of those stories. Like, there's been so many of them this year. Right. And I remember having a conversation with somebody, and they said, does she not see on Twitter all these other people getting expelled? Like, how do you see that every day and not learn? And my point was, no, she doesn't see it on Twitter, because her Twitter is different than yours. Like, we see these threads on Twitter that's like Black Lives Matter explained, why you shouldn't say the N-word in songs explained, like my experience as a Black woman explained. These people, they're not having the same media experience. Right. And so when we ask questions like, why do people still say the N-word? Don't they see X? Or why do people believe the election is rigged? Didn't they hear what Joe Scarborough said on MSNBC? They really didn't. And that's the point, is hearing something entirely different. It really is a different world.
Man. And people don't realize that. And those who even, they use social media a lot, kind of take it for granted that, your social media is surrounded by people who agree with you for the most part. But
Right.
so let's get back to the campaign trail. I want to hear about, you signing up for Biden and everything leading up into the debates up until the final election day. So what kind of and also what role did you play as far as like what kind of details did your job have?
Right. So my first job was a field organizer, which is like the bottom pole, the bottom rung. And then by the time it came to the general election, I became a regional field organizer, which basically just means you're managing and coaching other field organizers. But field and organizing is all about reaching volunteers, recruiting them, getting them involved in your program, and then using those volunteers to make phone calls, knock on doors, and have conversations with voters to try to get them engaged in the election. And so in Nevada, which is the first state, you're really that last month, it's all about quantity. You're going out, you're informing voters, you're knocking on doors. And this is a great example of what we just talked about, because, somebody might say, well, you're in a primary, so all the voters are Democrats anyway. Like, why do you really need to go talk to them? And then they might say, well, if somebody's already voting for Joe Biden, what's the point of that conversation? You go to people's door, they don't know when the election is. They don't know that there is an election. They don't know the candidates. And it's not, and again,
Wow.
Their media is different from my media.
Really?
And yeah, exactly. You're trying to persuade, you're trying to inform, you're trying to get people to the polls. You're trying to build a community around your candidate. And I think that's what, you said you were a Bernie supporter. There's always the fighting between like the Bernie and the Biden. Like I'll compliment the Bernie campaign. The thing Bernie Sanders and their campaign does as well, if not the best out of any candidate in the last 4 years of the Democratic Party, is building that community.
Mm-hmm.
You don't think about the Biden supporters as a unit that have this cohesive community where they all get along and they all share this sort of greater purpose.
Right.
And the Bernie Sanders does. Like, his supporters know each other. They're not just connected through the campaign. They're connected online. They're connected in their friend groups. They're getting people like you who aren't registered as a Democrat,
Mm-hmm.
who maybe doesn't vote every single election for every single position, involved in the system. And honestly, this is what Trump did too. I mean, this is the mirror, right? There are people who voted for Trump who've never voted for, who are buying hats and are booking plane tickets and flying to DC to break windows at the Capitol. I mean, it's the negative version of it, but this is what Bernie does really well, and it's what all campaigns are trying to do. You're
right.
trying to build organic support.
Yep.
Is our role.
Yeah. So, man, that's Trump. I mean, that's perfectly put to look at it, because I would say what's strong about Bernie's team, because I was like on their call list or whatever. So I was getting emails, I was getting a lot of text messages, and the emails was like really detailed and like thorough on what was going on. So I was able to like follow. I mean, I didn't read them every day or anything like that, but then I had time and I would read through one as the notification popped up on my phone. It was like, oh, okay, I see what they got going on. And then he hanging out with Killer Mike. You know what I'm saying? He hanging out with other rappers, and you got to Feel the Burn. You know what I'm saying? Hashtag. And they did a really good job of promoting him, but I still feel like enough people still didn't know, because I guess he was from Vermont, which is such a small market, and your original foundation of followers is kind of an important thing. Like that helped Trump out a lot too, because Trump was always hanging out with rappers and accepted as cool because he had a bunch of money and fame, and he was in Home Alone, and you see the little cameo he made walking through the Waldorf Astoria when Kevin was running through there. So like Trump had some cool issue, you know what I'm saying? Like it was like, oh, Donald Trump, that's what's up. And then
he was on TV he was the most watched show for 10 years.
TV show.
And people have said like Tucker Carlson could run for president next, and a lot of people laugh at that, but Tucker Carlson is getting a free campaign ad for 3 hours every night. And
Every night.
millions of Republicans are watching it. So I don't think it's crazy. I mean, that's the way to do it.
I listened, like Trey sent me one of he like tagged me in one of Tucker Carlson's videos that as he was speaking. I think it was either last night or this morning. And a lot of what he said I kind of agree with, but it's like, bruh, we've been saying these same things about if you treat people badly or they lose faith in the systems that's supposed to be providing and protecting them, then they gonna rally and riot against it. And yeah, that's what Black people been doing for years, because we've been dying. You know what I'm saying? Like, we've been dying. Innocent lives have been lost for no reason, and other things have been put in place that have systematically disenfranchised Black people. And these dudes just lost the election. That's it. It ain't really that big a deal. Like, your life ain't on the line, big dog. You really gonna be straight. Like, okay, let's look at the guy at Rouse's, for example.
Right. I was gonna say.
Yeah, he got plenty of money. He ain't gonna be hurting for nothing. All the Black people love Rouse's. I'm hurt. I don't know if I can go in Rouse's though. You know what I'm saying? And knowing that he over there supporting all that foolishness. Now, maybe, but maybe at the same time, maybe he was just there and didn't know it was gonna go that crazy, and they was gonna storm the Capitol. I don't think that he actually did that. But come on, man. You gonna be all right. You didn't lose no life. You didn't lose no property. No, you didn't lose a loved one. Those two things don't compare. But Tucker Carlson was kind of like trying to compare the two, even though he's not incorrect in that. But if you put the situations on side of each other, it don't really add up.
Well, it's the problem of the false equivalency, and this is where Republicans make their money, because there are areas where they know they're weak, and in those areas they say, well, the Democrats X, Y, and Z, and you cross those out. But
right.
The bottom line is this: like, we started this by talking about, you had Bush, you had Trump, and they bookended Barack Obama. The fact that Trump comes after Barack Obama is not a mistake, and it's not happenstance.
Right.
He and the anger and the movement is a direct response to the first Black president. I mean, it's clear in the rhetoric he uses. It's clear in the way the campaign targets voters. It's clear in the way that voters talk about what they like about Trump. Making America great again, bringing us back. It's all about trying to take revenge against the first Black president, and and it's not the same. It really, really is not the same. The owner of Rouse's was at the event. The owner of Red Zeppelin is at the event. Trump has the overwhelming majority of millionaires and billionaires support. I mean, it truly is not about economic anxiety. And if it was, it would be, these folks would be supporting the candidates that are talking about expanding healthcare, about expanding food stamps, about expanding, all these programs that lift the poorest among us, the social safety nets that hold people together, that keep families together. I'm fairly skeptical of the economic anxiety argument that Trump appeals to these people purely based on some sort of sense of economic loss. I think it's much deeper than that. And I think most of it has to do with social and racial status.
No doubt about it, man. The economics do play a part in it, because he does kind of tell them that I'm gonna make sure you got jobs, I'm gonna make sure you got money, I'm gonna give you your tax breaks and all that, because he says all those things. And I guess he does them. Apparently, everybody's all happy, and they claim that they, paid less in taxes or they made more money under Trump. A lot. I mean, I just hear people saying that in different conversations. But clearly, and I don't think it's a secret for anybody to know that from the beginning, he didn't want to distance himself from David Duke, and he didn't want to say anything bad about the people in Charleston, South Carolina, when they was going with the tiki torches and running over people in the crowd and things like that. He never denounced the racism. He never ever denounced racism once, and if I'm wrong about that, point me to the speech, point me to the writing or whatever it is that he did that on.
No, but that's the thing, Coach, is he fits it in. He fits in these little words. It's intentional, and this is the point of a dog whistle, is that you can always say you weren't saying the thing you were clearly saying.
Oh, right.
So no, you're right. He does do that. And if people are listening and they don't know what you're talking about, David Duke got 42% of the vote to be governor of the entire state of Louisiana
Facts.
not in 1792, not in 1892. I mean, this is in your lifetime, Coach.
Yeah, I saw
right before my lifetime. Exactly.
Right. I remember, I never forget, because Cleo Fields was running in that race too. And so was Michael Foster, who ended up winning that election. But
well, Foster, so Foster's the incumbent, and then Duke and Edwards run, and then Edwards beats them both.
It was Edwards, my bad. Cleo Fields,
But
Cleo Fields ran another time against Foster. I guess that was in 88.
But what they want us to believe is that the 40% that voted for Duke 20 years ago are the same. It's the same group voting for Trump now, but it's all about economic anxiety. Like it's not about the racial stuff anymore. It's all about, economic anxiety, the economy being good. The fact, Coach, we're now looking at we're 21 years into this century. And the fact is we had the first Great Recession, which we were led to by a Republican president.
Yep.
And then we have the first president in 100 years who's going to leave office having lost more jobs than he created, in Donald Trump. And a lot of people are going to say, well, it's the coronavirus. But of course, he's the one who managed the coronavirus.
Right.
And it all falls on his plate. So you have two disastrous economic presidencies bookending the Obama era, where stocks hit heights. He pulled us out of the impression. We saw record job growth. So this idea that, well, if we elect Democrats, what's going to happen to the economy? Bill Clinton balanced the budget, and Barack Obama brought us back from the recession. It's this is about social status. It's about racial politics. And if anything, it's been going on for a long time, and Trump just made it so much more explicit that he brought out people who I guess couldn't hear the faint dog whistles of the Bush era,
right,
who needed to be told right in front of their face, what it all was about.
Yeah. I mean, I could take it back even another 20 years, Max, because I was born in 1983 and Reagan was the president. Now, everybody loves Reaganomics and thinks that the trickle down or whatever strategy that he had worked out for people. But for the Black community in the 1980s was the crack epidemic, which absolutely undid everything that the civil rights movement had done. It just flipped it. It flipped our community on his head. And then you follow Reagan with Bush, the first one, and then you get Clinton, and you get economically, Black people started to move in a positive direction again. Now we still got some problems and some issues, but a lot of that started right back going on as Bush became president. I seen a significant change in Baton Rouge specifically. In the Black community when Bush was president, with the same thing, with a drug problem, with ecstasy hitting our streets hard, and you hear all the jigger music and all that was going on. That was pumping hard under Bobby Jindal and I guess Kathleen Blanco too, but and Katrina and all that was going on. And I might be going off on a tangent.
Well, no, Katrina's the key word though, because in the same way, if you mismanage a huge catastrophe, it's going to have social and economic ramifications. If you mismanage coronavirus, it's going to tank the economy. And if you mismanage Katrina, I mean, Baton Rouge, any city is built, plus or minus 10% to hold the capacity it has.
Right.
And then after Katrina, you see this huge mass evacuation because people need a place to live.
Yep.
And it totally changes the dynamic of the city. I mean, it doesn't, just fall on Bush, but it's a question, of leadership.
Right.
And anybody who's making the argument that they vote Republican because of economic outcomes is either really rich, because the rich do better, or they're either masking why they're really voting Republican, or they genuinely don't understand. Because you live in Ascension Parish now, Coach. Is that right?
That's for almost 8 years now.
You drive to and from school every day, and you see folks in the trailers with the Trump flags. Are those the people with the huge stock portfolios? Like, is that really the people who have benefited under the Trump economy? I think it has more to do with an identity. And again, I want to be careful here, because I think everybody has culpability and responsibility for themselves. But at the same time, even the people who stormed the Capitol yesterday, I do feel bad for them in a sense, because again, they're being lied to. The people who broke the windows are to blame, But what about the senators that told him this election was stolen when it clearly wasn't? I mean, it was a landslide election. And there's nowhere for them to turn. They never get any other news. What's on their Facebook, what their uncle's posting, and that's all they see.
Man, and it's so sad that so many people vote against their own best interest. But that's the number one strategy of controlling people, Max, is dividing and conquering. And as long as the our racial lines divide us and not divided based off class, if people united across class lines, we could probably become a powerful unit and get things done. Or if we and people let race get in the way of that, though. You know what I'm saying? Like people who are in poverty that's white, or a lot of them are looking to vote for Trump just strictly off that's those racial undertones of his campaign, and they're not looking at what they stand to benefit, or what they stand to lose, or what they sacrificing by voting. They don't, and when I say they don't know, it's because they don't even do any research about the policies at all anyway. Some of them are barely really even literate and don't understand the Constitution, and don't even understand, they don't even read the Declaration of Independence or any of those things. So they don't have a true knowledge, because it's taught in school, but it ain't, that stuff don't stick unless you go in and learn it more on your own. The
Right.
best thing that a teacher could ever do for a student is to make them want to learn more for themselves, not to just teach them this content, because once they move away from the content, they gonna forget it. If you don't use it, you lose it. But if you inspire someone to like find interest and passion for learning something, then you've accomplished your goal as a teacher, because they gonna go learn it and they gonna own it for themselves, and they gonna be able to apply it in their own life. But if you just learning something to pass the test, then that ain't gonna stick, and that ain't gonna work.
So when you're with the high schoolers every day, are they as angry politically as their parents and everybody else, or are they? We're obviously they're seeing everything and they're reacting to it and they have opinions, but would you say it's the normal like fun classroom environment of a political discussion, or do you think it matches the tone of the rest of the society right now?
I think that I've made them a comfortable enough in my class to where they're not doing that with me. I kind of make it to where we can all kind of just laugh at what's going on from either side. And no, they not really that angry. The kids are not showing me a lot of anger. Now, I have seen, some of the black kids are feel comfortable expressing some of their frustrations that they might have. But today in my class, in my second block class, where these are freshmen, I offered each one of my classes an opportunity to speak about what happened. I just like, look, if y'all want to talk about it, we can talk about it for like 15 minutes, and then we can get back to work, because I don't want to ignore it. So I gave them an opportunity to speak, and man, it was a beautiful thing to hear those students share their thoughts about what they saw. It was like, I saw this in the summertime and I didn't see this yesterday. Or I saw this, well, they did that in the summertime and they didn't do this yesterday. You know what I'm saying? Like they had all kind of different ways they was looking at it, and they were very respectful with each other. And one kid at the end, I was like, y'all got anything else before we about to move on? He was like, and this kid hadn't said anything. He was like, Coach, I was looking on Instagram and I saw a lot of memes that people had made about it, and they were all really funny. And I was like, bet we gonna end on that. So I mean, they wasn't really tripping about it. But they did have thoughts and feelings that they probably wasn't gonna get to express in other classes, or they might not have. They might talk to their parents about it, and their parents gonna think one way, and they just gonna roll with that. But in class, they was able to bounce ideas and agree to disagree or whatever. But everybody was chill and it was cool, and it felt like school. It didn't feel like some tense place that we can't talk to each other. And I try my best to provide that environment in my classroom.
Well, that's one of the things I really value about being in class with you, being in class with, you talked about Miss Bentley Smith. And one of the things about the sheltered media environment is when you always talk to people you agree with, when you're faced with that person you don't agree with, you get angry because you can't possibly, understand or hear another side.
Right.
Not to say again that all sides should be treated necessarily equally, but do you find that the black kids in your class interact differently when they're in the mixed class versus when they're all together just with you in your class?
Yes. Definitely. I think that's just kind of how it always works out. A little bit of code switching, you know what I'm saying, that goes on because people want to fit in and you kind of got to speak the language of the people who you're around. And I think they kind of just switch back and forth. Not too much. They don't sound like a completely different person. It's just a different type of conversation.
I guess with content though, I mean, is there politically, do they become more sheltered around the rest of the class? I guess.
Oh, for sure.
I definitely have like a conception or like understanding of Santa Mont that might not meet the reality. So I was just curious.
Man, let me say this, and I ain't gonna never bash Santa Mont because I love my job. I love the people I work with. You know what I'm saying? Like it's definitely a beneficial situation for me, and it's a benefit for Santa Mont to have me too. You know what I'm saying? So
Right.
I would never do anything or say anything to talk down on the school. But the school does have a reputation. And I think there are more similarities that St. Amant has that McKinley does have too, as far as behavior with students and things like that. But what they do have is Ascension Parish has a whole different type of setup with the resources and the layouts of the school and the facilities and things like that. So I think sometimes our students might take for granted how blessed they are, and they don't understand because, bro, we played McKinley this year. It was a lightning storm that night, so a lot of people who wanted to come to the game couldn't come, and we had to evacuate the field, and they had to go sit in the auditorium at the school. So St. Amant doesn't have an auditorium like McKinley. So I'm in there like, I'm directing everybody like, hey, y'all all go back here. We good. I'm gonna take care of it. Everything good. So I'm like in my moment, like I got to bring them inside of the school to see it. And they was like, wow, this is really nice in here. We don't have something like this. And when I heard them say that, I knew that they were seeing something that was changing their whole perception of what they thought McKinley was and what type of people they are at McKinley. And being me and saying, look, I came from McKinley. This is me. So y'all can't whatever you think it is, it might be that, but it's also me, and it's also Ted James, and it's Max Martin, and it's you know what I'm saying? It's all kind of other famous people who've done amazing things. So the way St. Amant people look at McKinley is one way because they don't really know. And the same thing is we would look at St. Amant until you really get out here and get into the school. But it's like a family. Everybody got issues, but they got a rich tradition that's community based, which is similar to McKinley. They got all kind of other things, but obviously it's a different demographic from a socioeconomic standpoint and a racial standpoint. So the things that you would, some of the reputation that they get is earned. And I don't think that, I don't think that's a secret.
Right.
It just is what it is.
Well, something you've always really, something that's been consistent with you since we've met is this idea of like people who are different getting along and coming together.
Right.
And I think something that I hear a lot is this idea of like, when people say that, or when people hear that, what they hear is like, we have to accept racism and sexism. Like, you're telling me to accept them and let people get away with it. But I guess what this year has taught me is that the idea that we can all live in our bubbles happily ever after is not going to work.
No.
So when I say we all need to get along, it's less of a fairy tale and more of a reality of people who all live together have to get along, or this is what happens. Right. The protests we saw this summer, putting the protests themselves aside for a bit, you have these Antifa groups and these far right groups or these far left groups, people fighting each other in the street, and everybody will watch that and come down on their side of who's to blame, and they'll assign all the responsibility. But I guess, again, to the point of like people getting along and coming together, that's a practical worry that I have. Like, we have people, it's not going to stay the same or get better without us changing, because it's going to get worse.
Right.
And I think what I worry is this summer was just a preview, and then we saw it yesterday. I mean, what we saw yesterday, I wouldn't have believed it a year ago.
Right.
I would not have believed it. And I think we have this weird thing where we see something crazy happen, and because we're human beings and we're programmed to get by stuff, we just say, wow, that was horrible, and we just move on.
Yep.
But yesterday was a warning. And that's why I think it's so important. We don't have to talk about this, but to impeach Trump is because, he has 13 more days, and everybody said, wow, what a crazy way for Trump to end his presidency. But, why are we so sure that's the end? I mean, unless you change something fundamentally, it's going to get worse.
Right.
But putting that aside, it's something you've always valued and done really well. And this year more than ever, I used to say, well, you don't want to get along with people who you can't get along with, but we're reaching a point of potential crisis, I think, where we're so divided.
Yeah, I mean, this is what I know that it's kind of like idealistic, and can't we all just get along is kind of a cliche, but I think you starting to get it to what I'm saying is like we all want to live at the end of the day. We don't have to go to war over political ideals. It ain't worth it. You know what I'm saying? With people who like live next door to you. We got similar interests. We are more alike than we are different. No matter what we believe in as a political idea, we still human beings at the end of the day, and we need to eat, we need to sleep, we need to have a good time. You know what I'm saying? And we want to raise families and do it. It don't bother me that much that somebody could be racist. I ain't gotta be friends with them. I would rather them not be. But another thing is that the racism and all the stereotypes and prejudices that people have gets generalized so heavily that you see a black person, you automatically think that they a certain way, or you see a white person, or you see with a Santa Claus shirt on, and you automatically think a certain thing about them. But you haven't spoken to that individual. You don't really know this person, so you can't really like judge them off of their political affiliations or their skin color. You really have to meet this person, talk to them, and let them come clean about whatever it is they disagree with you or you don't like about them, and then you can say F them. You know what I'm saying? And I don't want to deal with them. And then you just don't deal with them. You ain't gotta fight them. You ain't gotta take up arms about it. I ain't dealing with you. I'm gonna deal with the people who I need to deal with. And you keep your peace. I won't bother you. Don't bother me. And then we good.
That might be a key generational point you've hit on, though, because the line you said about if somebody's racist, there's a way to coexist without like that. I'd rather not be. We don't have to be friends, but we can coexist. I think like this generation, what we saw this summer in the activism and organizing that came out of that event was actually people saying, well, no, that's not enough anymore. That we actually have to attack this. And I like intuitively, I kind of feel, but I guess what I want to know is there a way to not tolerate it and at the same time not, like you said, have that civil war? And I don't know, but
right.
But I think sometimes people say, like, especially younger people, they talk about revolution, right? Mm-hmm. And revolution is one way, but revolutions often end bloody, and I don't
always end bloody. There is no
always end bloody.
Blood. There is no revolution without bloodshed.
Right, and I I don't know if it should be. I don't know. It's just one of the questions I ask.
This is my thought on that, because I saw some chick saying this is a revolution yesterday, and I'm like, man, look. If black people, especially, think about revolution like the Black Panthers was thinking about, with like guerrilla warfare and all that stuff, like George Jackson was thinking about. I don't know if you read Soledad Brother, but that's a great book. Um, hold up, but yeah, what I was saying,
You were talking about
the
Soledad
revolution.
Brother.
Yeah, the
Yeah,
Soledad Brother. That's a good
Revolution.
book. But George Jackson was talking about, how the Black Panthers should start a revolution, and many people did speak on it. That ain't gonna work, bro. There's no way you can beat the United States military. You can't take over this country unless the United States military is complicit in joining with revolutionaries to overthrow themselves. There will not be a internal revolution that takes over this government and lives to tell about it for longer than probably 24 hours. I just can't see that happening. Our military has become entirely too powerful, and we got too much intelligence on all the people. The Patriot Act has given, access to each and every person's search engines and everything else, all of their records. And we got these phones that track our every movement. So they will know where we are if we trying to revolt. I'm saying we, but I ain't trying to do that.
Well, right. Well, but
I just don't think it's possible.
But it's positive too, because I'm glad we have that protection when it's the Trump people breaking the windows at the Capitol.
Yeah, it gives me confidence.
One thing about crises, though, is they allow you the ability to think about things in a way you never have before.
Right.
And I think after coronavirus, after the Trump presidency, after these last 4 years, for example, for 50 years, Republicans always talked about, free money, freeloaders, giving away money. You had Republican senators and Republican president coming out being like, send everybody a $2,000 check. Just send them the check.
Yeah.
Because these sort of, rules are broken whenever things start to get out of the ordinary. And I think we're there. I mean, I think so. We've talked about a lot of the negative potential, but I also think there's a ton of positive potential too.
For sure.
And we now have a Democratic Senate with Kamala Harris tie-breaking it, a Democratic House, and
I'm cool with
president who now, right? And we now have a president with the full potential to do a lot of things in a moment where you might have more leeway than you have before. I mean, Joe Biden could step in on the first day and send every single American a $2,000 check, and Republicans wouldn't really be able to complain. I mean, can you imagine if Obama on his first day had said, "We're just going to send everybody money"?
Right.
But we're in a phase now where I think more is on the table than there's ever been before, and it's kind of scary, but it's also kind of exciting too. Yep. I think there's a lot of potential.
I agree, and I'm. It's kind of like when we were talking about the Raiders. Like, this Derek Carr got all the weapons he needs. Joe Biden and the Democrats have everything that they need to be successful. If Democrats fail here, it's gonna get bad. You know what I'm saying? The Republicans will come back with even more vitriol than they had before. So it's like crucial to succeed here. You know what I'm saying? I don't doubt that there will be success. And as you know, my kids are growing up and they about to start paying attention and knowing what's going on and be aware over these, by the time this first 4 years in and this next election comes, they'll be able to ask questions and understand what's going on. So I want to be able to tell them that the Democrats got it right, and prove Trump and his craziness and his crazy followers wrong. And it just is what it is. I ain't a person who hates Trump, but he let too much slide with all this racism stuff, man. And I felt a lot of disrespect towards black people that came from people that were supporting him, and he ain't say nothing about it. But I can't sit here and lie like I ain't got people who I really truly care about who voted for Trump too. Like, I do. Like, I love them, and I don't feel no type of way about them voting for Trump. It don't bother me at all. I guess I've gotten to the point where I just kind of get it that certain people are gonna look at certain things as far as politics goes, and they're not gonna look at anything else. That's how they were raised. That's what they are. They bought into it. You can't teach old dog new tricks. It's no big deal. And Trump ain't win anyway, so it don't even really matter. You know what I'm saying?
Do they agree with that last part? Do they agree that Trump didn't really win?
Some of them don't. Some of them don't. I ain't gonna lie, and that's their problem. Really, I mean, it wouldn't have bothered me. I wouldn't have been happy if Trump won. Don't get me wrong. I did have some concerns about it. And I talked about this on the show that I admit I told everybody, I was open and transparent that I voted for Joe Biden, and I told them that it was a person who I called before the night before the election to convince me to vote for Joe Biden because I didn't know if I was going to do it or not. And that person just happens to be Maxwell Martin, who worked on Joe Biden's campaign. And I'm thankful and I'm confident in your vote and you telling me that this is the thing to do because you work so closely with it, and I trust not only your political knowledge but your character as a person more so than anything. So I just decided I was gonna ride with you, and I'm rolling with the winner. And if that's what, and if he did cheat to win, we still won. But I don't
Well,
believe it. I don't believe that.
yeah, I want to go on the record and say that we didn't. But Coach, that means a lot to me, and I think so much of what we've talked about this last hour has come down to, well, are we going to unite or are we going to divide?
Right.
And whatever you want to say about Trump or Biden, go issue by issue. I think any honest person who's looking at the two of them, Joe Biden is a uniter and Donald Trump is a divider. I mean, look at the primary.
Right.
Bernie Sanders supporters were not excited to vote for Joe Biden. Joe Biden united extremely strong support from Black women and Black voters in general who won him the primary, and who, by the way, won us the United States Senate a few nights ago.
Yep.
He united that with Republicans who were tired of Trump, with conservative older Democrats who felt the party had gone too far left, with really excited young activist supporters of Bernie Sanders who did not want to vote for Joe Biden. But, he found a way to bring all those people together, and Joe Biden got more votes than any person in the history of the United States running for president. And if you look at our country right now, the thread has run thin, and there's a potential for us to get torn apart. And I don't think Donald Trump is the person for this moment, even if you like him. I don't think he's the person for this moment, and I think Joe Biden has the potential to be the right quarterback.
Right.
To use your metaphor further. But it means a lot for you to say that. And if any of my bosses are listening who paid me all that money to get people to vote for Joe Biden, Coach Reed's on the record that I got at least one. So there you go.
No doubt. And you went out in the field and you talked to these people who you said didn't even know there were an election coming. You talked to people who were upset about Trump. You know what I mean? You met all type of voters, and you coached other people who met all type of voters and came back to you with information about it and data that you could look at tangibly and see that where these results came from in the voting process. While on the other hand, these people who think that the election was stolen are going off random websites and other things and complaining about the justice system that they didn't complain about. The only other time I heard these types of people complain about the justice system was when OJ got off. I ain't heard nothing else.
And they had it pretty good for the 30 years in between. No complaints.
You know what I'm saying? So they ain't complaining.
Well, let's debunk a few rumors in case anybody's listening, because there's a few common misconceptions that we can knock out.
All right, we're gonna make a segment out of this. This is Max debunking rumors from the Trump campaign about election fraud. Go ahead.
Okay, first, the main one. So this election was always going to be a challenge because of the coronavirus, and you had a bunch of states who were doing mail-in voting for the first time. So there were always going to be challenges and things that needed to be fixed. Like that, any free-thinking person should be able to admit that, when you're trying an entirely new system, in the process of 5 months, there are going to be things that need to be fixed. So let's focus first on the biggest, I think, thing that I hear and read from Trump supporters is why did it take so long? Why were votes dumped at 3 a.m.? We all remember election night, and we got the Florida results in 30 minutes. That's because in Florida, you can start counting early votes before election day. So if you vote, Coach Reed, and you vote early, that vote can be counted, and then right when election day starts, it can be run through the machine and you're in.
Right.
In these other states, Pennsylvania, Georgia, Republican-led legislatures, at the direction of Trump, passed laws to delay where you can't count those votes until election night. And so a mail-in ballot that could have been counted and could have been ready to go was delayed. So that's the first thing. Like, it wasn't the reason it was taking. A lot of people say, why did it go so fast in Florida? It's not an accident. It's intentional. They were preparing those votes earlier.
Right.
The second thing is this idea that there are voters, appearing out of nowhere. The really cool thing about being in a campaign is you realize that all of this information is public. When you vote early, the state releases your name and address. By the way, people out there, if you're voting, it's public information that you voted, not who you voted for, but that you voted. That's how campaigns get your name to call you, because it's all public data.
Right.
So when you vote early, we get, oh, Malcolm Reed's voted early. We're not going to call him anymore. We're not going to send him any more mail. We're not going to do any of that. So all of the people who voted early, whose votes got counted later, we knew they had voted because the state releases all that information publicly. So when the data gets dumped at 3 a.m., I don't want to use the word dump because it has this negative connotation. When the data gets counted at 3 a.m., and it's like, where'd all these voters from Milwaukee come from? You can every campaign, including the Republicans, can see the exact amount of voters that have already voted. So they knew those votes were coming. They knew those numbers were there. And, the Trump campaign is 1 for 59 in lawsuits since the campaign happened. And it's because, there's no standing here.
Right.
The third big thing you hear is like, well, how come all these votes that were dumped late were all for one candidate? Well, if you have one candidate telling people to vote by mail and to vote safely, and you have one candidate telling people coronavirus is fake, don't vote by mail because it's fraudulent, they're going to try to steal your vote and throw it away, those people aren't going to use vote by mail.
Right.
So a lot of people looked at it and said, well, all the vote by mails went to Democrats. Well, of course, because there's only one campaign who was trying to get people to vote by mail.
Everybody was saying that from the beginning, that the Republicans was going to vote in person and the Democrats was going to vote mail in. Especially with, it's always like that in other elections too, more so. I mean, as far as what I've heard, but with the corona being an issue, it was just like, okay, we're not going in and vote at all. So
it was a real mistake, Coach Reed.
Huh?
It was a real mistake, because here's the real mistake that the campaign made there. If you're a campaign, you have to spend whatever money you spend is divided by your amount of voters, and that's how much you spent to get each vote.
Right.
And so if Malcolm Reed at 123 Peachtree Lane is my strongest supporter, the last 2 months of the election, I'm still sending him mail. I'm still trying to get him out to vote. You have to spend money. But if you get your voters to vote early, and then I get the list from the state that says Malcolm Reed's already voted, I don't have to send him any more emails. I don't have to send him any more letters. I don't have to send an organizer to his house. I don't have to send a volunteer there. I don't have to send a paid canvasser there. I don't have to hang something on his door. So all that cost, time, and energy is done. So if you're the Democrats in all of these states where you have 50, 60, 70% of the total vote voting early, we got all those people out of the way. In the last month, we're focusing on a smaller pot. Whereas Republicans said, actually, don't vote early. It's fraudulent. It's rigged. And so all that time, extra time, had to be spent on the top end of voters. And then when it comes to election day, they have to appeal to everybody, where we could really narrow in. And by the end of the campaign, so I was in North Carolina for the general election, which we ended up losing narrowly. We won the governorship. We lost the Senate race in the presidential election. We were calling people, and they were like, we've heard from you 10 times today. I promise we're going to go vote. And it's just because, we were hitting every target, and we had such a great campaign where we gotten everybody in the door. And by the way, telling people voting is fraudulent is not a good idea, because you just lost 2 Senate elections because people didn't believe the vote. So people somehow simultaneously believe that government is incompetent and that government has the facility to overthrow a presidential election, and they can't do both, right? So
that's what I was saying. That's why I was tripping about the whole thing about storming the Capitol, because you got a sitting, yet it's coming to an end, but you got a sitting Republican president and you got a sitting Republican majority in the House in the Senate. Why do you believe that your own leadership gonna fail you as far as the election? Like, you think that the Democrats can steal the election from a Republican president and a Republican Congress? That's just
Right.
I never that's logic that doesn't add up in my brain. Because I figured you got the leadership, you already in the door. If you feel like they cheating, why don't you just cheat back and win? But
And they do cheat. Well, Coach Reed, they do cheat. They've been disenfranchising black and brown voters for years. And
right.
I think, and Coach Reed, that's a great question. If they're cheating, why don't we cheat? But that's what they're saying is, well, we're cheating, so why wouldn't they be cheating as well? It's a guilty man's mentality. And you look in Georgia, Coach Reed, Georgia, some of the worst disenfranchisement in the country. It's a deep South state. You have a Republican governor. You have a Republican Secretary of State, and you still lost. And then you have Trump turning on his own. And you know, it's sad in a way, in a human sense, of somebody's loyalty being betrayed. But Trump has only loyalty to himself, and so he'll turn on anybody. But again, seriously, if you think the Democrats could steal an election in Georgia with that leadership, you're mistaken. And by the way, if you look at the numbers from the general election, Atlanta is such an incredibly organized city. Atlanta, if you think, oh well, big city Atlanta, Keisha Lance bottom still the election. The vote in 2020 in Atlanta was very similar to 2016, very, very, very similar, and 2018 in the governor's race. Because Atlanta's so well organized, it's hard to do better than you've done in the past. The story of 2020 was we did so much better with rural voters, with suburban voters, and especially rural and suburban Black communities, which are organized so incredibly well in Georgia. That's where we won. And all of those places have Republican county commissioners, Republican election officials. And you know, again, you don't want to give this stuff too much attention, Coach, but I do think it's important to reach out and let people know the facts about how the election happened. We won by thousands and thousands of votes. We won by the exact same margin in the Electoral College. Trump won in 2016, and you know, it's over. And you know,
it's over.
It's over. It's been over.
Right. It ain't over till them though, Max. It's like they truly don't believe that it's over, man. And I almost feel sorry for them, but I can't for real.
I do feel sorry for them because they're being lied to. But then again, I don't in a way. But I wish they weren't being lied to by people with a lot more money and power.
For sure. Well, Max, I think we didn't said it all, man. I really, really, really do appreciate you coming on and sharing that insight, because that's kind of gold right there. The last little segment of you talking about, you know, the debunking and the strategy that goes into campaigning, that, you know, most people don't really see all that. You know what I'm saying? They think they hear it in the you know, watching the news and watching the media, but they don't really, if you're not really on ground zero and working with those people that closely, you really don't understand it. So that's some valuable experience that you got. I know it's going to be beneficial to you when you become whatever you're going to become, whenever you run for whatever office you're going to run for. I know that day coming. And just know that Chestnut Checkers will be supporting you and endorsing you as a candidate in whatever it is that you're doing. And Malcolm Reed definitely for sure will be endorsing you as a candidate.
Wonderful. Well, I got my first endorsement already. I'm ahead of the curve.
You're ahead of the curve, man. You know, just one at a time. Well, you got a fiance too, man. So you definitely got another one.
I'm checking the box. Well, Coach, thank you. I appreciate you having me on, and hopefully it's not the last time. And look, once you go to McKinley, you can do anything. It opens the entire world to you, and you know all about that. So I'm so glad to have you as a friend and a mentor for all these years, and it's really cool to be on. I appreciate it.
No doubt. Thank you so much for coming on, man. And I'll definitely be in touch with you.
Yes, sir.
Till next time, Max. I'll see you later. All right.
That was fun.
It was fun.